Welcome to Allies or Enemies. I'm Jess.
And I am Shawn, and today we are continuing to count down our top 100 favorite board games of all time. And this is the second last one. We're in the teens, so let's go. My number 20 is Horrified, and Horrified is, we play Horrified so much. This is a super simple co-op game in which you are villagers and there's different monsters. Those monsters are causing trouble. You gotta stop them causing trouble while you're helping other more defenseless, kind of dumber villagers to get to the places that they need to go. And all you're doing is just kind of moving, picking up stuff, drawing some cards. Super simple, but we love it. We've played it so many times. We got 3 different versions of it. I like all 3 versions, I think. I think probably Greek Monsters is like mechanically the best game, but Universal is still thematically my favorite of the 3. And I'm excited to see what happens with the new one as well, where I understand you can like mix in some of the other monsters as well. I think you can kind of mix and match in like World of Monsters. We haven't played that one yet though, but the ones I have played have made this my number 20.
My number 20 is Gaia Project, and Gaia Project is very similar to its predecessor, Terra Mystica, but it takes place in space. There are still a whole ton of factions, but this time space factions, and it plays really well at 2 players. And how it does that is it has a modular board that you set up, and so it's a bit smaller for 2 players, meaning you're forced to build together more. And it has this whole like tech track. So instead of the cultists where you're just kind of moving up these tracks, you get to choose these different types of technology. So you might be like building your engine to get more stuff each round, or being able to build further away. There's just a whole bunch of different upgrades that you're gonna have to pick from because you can't have everything. And so there is just so much going on. It's definitely a heavier game, I would say, than Terra Mystica, but that also makes it more interesting, and it's my number 20.
My number 19 is Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig, and this takes 2 different games that I like fine, but smushes them together to make this game that I really like. And Between Two Castles has become one of our ultimate kind of cozy, comfy games. We play this all the time, but the weirdest thing is, we never play this as like the normal game. So there's 2 ways you can play Between Two Castles. The main way is this multiplayer game where you're building castles with people on either side of you. And so you kind of got to work cooperatively with those 2 people, building these things together, and then whoever's got the best of the average of the castles wins the game. And that way works great. But there's also a bunch of different variants that work for 2 players, and we specifically use this one variant that I think is in the expansion, but you could just use it if you feel like it. So what you do is when you've got your bunch of tiles in your hands, you're going to choose one to go in your castle and choose one that's going to go in your opponent's castle. So you're kind of half building their castle, but you're building it mischievously. You're giving them stuff they specifically don't want, and then it's up to them to try and work around what they've been given. And that is, it's super fun. Like, it's fun because it feels mischievous every time you give it to them. It also creates this ongoing emerging puzzle of like, how am I gonna deal with the crap you just gave me, as well as the stuff that I want to put in my castle. It's just such a like lighthearted, fun, super quick game. The scoring is a little bit long, but even that part's fun. And you end up with such a great thing in front of you, and it is my number 19.
My number 19 is Caverna the Cave Dwellers, and it is my favorite Uwe Rosenberg game. And what I really like about Caverna is probably the animal husbandry, because you get to do the animal husbandry like on the fields, as I imagine you do with Agricola. I've actually never played Agricola, but you have all kinds of different animals, and I love how much the animals make sense. Like, you can have as many sheep as there are dogs plus 1, because the dogs are watching over them. The boar can live like in the forest, and you can have 1 animal in the kitchen. And
yeah, I love how you can have like pet animals. Or are they eating the one in the kitchen?
No, the one in the kitchen is a pet animal.
Oh no, I'm worried now.
And in Caverna, there are a whole bunch of different rooms that you can explore, and those different rooms will give you like different bonuses and let you put out different things. My favorite is hands down the cuddle room. And so that's where you're able to just have a lot of sheep. And I can just picture myself in the cuddle room surrounded by sheep. But I love the animals. I love all of the different things you can explore with the different rooms you can put in your caves. And it is my number 19.
My number 18 is Near and Far. And Near and Far is probably my favorite like adventure-y game. I think it does an adventure so well, and it does it fairly like it's pretty rules light, and it's fairly abstracted, but still you feel like you're on an adventure. So you're in town, it's got kind of two halves to the boards. The near half and the far half, I guess. And in town, you're collecting up stuff, getting ready to go out, you're getting people to join your little gang, you're getting animals that are gonna come with you. Then you do the far part, which is going around this map. And the map part's pretty simple. You're going to different little places, you're getting rubies, you're getting different resources, you're laying down tents, you're also doing story actions. And you can do this as like an arcade, or you can do this like ongoing campaign, because there's a whole bunch of these different maps. And the campaigns are shockingly good. I always talk about how I don't like board game writing. This is the biggest exception to that of any game I know. They're nice, they're short, actually interesting. The stories are interesting. It's a choose your own adventure. They intertwine in cool ways. If you haven't played this, it is so worth it to give it a try. And it is my 18.
My number 18 is Welcome To, and this is my favorite flip and write game. And I think this was the first flip and write game we played that got us looking for even more, and it has withstood the test of time. You are drawing your house numbers on your sheet and picking an action. You always have 3 pairs to pick from, one that has a house number, one that has an action. But all of your houses have to go in ascending order. And then there are a lot of different actions you can pick. Maybe you're doing swimming pools or parks, or you might be trying to make your bonuses of like groups of houses stronger. And so it feels incredibly replayable, and that's not even mentioning all of the like alternate map packs that you can get too, because you can get like zombies and Halloween and ice cream trucks. And we've also got the whole like Welcome to the Moon, which is like a space campaign version with 8 different maps. And I love Welcome To like just as a whole, the whole series. I am going with the original, and it's my number 18.
My number 17 is Root, and we primarily play it 2-player. So this is a weird choice, because this is famously not a great 2-player game. And that does continue to be true, but I still love it. Even when we play this at 2, and we use the hirelings for that. We also have the Clockwork expansions, which are a little bit of work and a little bit of overhead, but I like this game enough that I'm willing to put in that work. But I love Root because it gives me a chance to play kind of a war game, a coin game that you will play with me, which is great. But also all those different factions, how differently and like intricately they play, I think is so interesting. Like playing with the Corvids feels wildly different than playing with the cats or playing with the otters, who are just like adorable arms dealers. And I love how all of it's just hidden under that like that little veneer of adorableness as well. But underneath that, it's a very violent, very mean game. And it's super fun. It's a box of toys that I love to get out and mush together. And it is my number 17.
My number 17 is Gloomhaven, and I think we discovered Gloomhaven at just the right time.
Yeah.
We were just getting really into board games again, and you went into a store and you just asked, what is the like biggest box that there is?
What is the heaviest box of game that I can purchase was my question.
Yes.
I would never ask that now. We don't have space for it, but at the time, it was just, what's the most game I can get?
Yeah, and the answer was obviously Gloomhaven. And so we got it and we played it a ton. There'd be evenings when we would sit down and play like 3 or 4 games. I just loved being able to upgrade the characters, retire them. I was telling my work colleagues about it who were not interested. And so we were so invested in Gloomhaven, and we were able to play it so much then, more so than now, I think, because we have so many more games now. So I think that's part of it. Frosthaven just didn't quite have the same appeal. Jaws of the Lion I thought was really good, but I love being able to open up and play a new character, and you're missing that with Jaws of the Lion. So at the time when we were playing it, it was my favorite game, and I think over time as my memory fades.
Yeah, we just haven't played it in a
Yeah,
while.
it's going to go down the list a little bit, but it was such an amazing experience. It's my number 17.
My number 16 is Voidfall, and Voidfall is not just my heaviest game on this list, but I was just looking at board game stats, and apparently it's our heaviest game that we own, and I'm not super shocked by this because this is how we spent our Boxing Day. We spent all day learning this game. It is a giant, giant game. But this game does such a great job of like this huge kind of galactic experience, and it really delivers on what I've hoped other games would do, and it does all of it. So you're exploring the galaxy, you're fighting in this really cool, like predetermined combat way, so it takes away the dice that I don't generally love. It's got resources, it's got all these different factions that play so different, like so many of them. It's got this really great action system where you're just choosing 2 things on one of your cards, but oh boy, the amount of thinking that goes into that. It's got technologies that you're adding to stuff. You're building houses around the galaxy. Obviously they're not houses, but you're building stuff around the galaxy. There's way too much to explain in this little video, but if you want like a huge galactic experience and you're willing to put in the time for that like pretty large rules overhead, but once you've got it, it's pretty streamlined. Voidfall, absolutely terrific, and it is my 16.
My number 16 is Planet Unknown, and I love tile placement games, and this is like a deluxe version. What makes it so fancy is the lazy Susan that all of the tiles come on, but that is such an important part because it means that on your turn you get to pick which tile you want, and everybody else has to take one of the 2 tiles in front of them. So it's so simultaneous. It means like you're not picking and then the next person has to pick. Everyone gets to pick and place their tiles. And you're doing it in like this space setting. And so you are putting your tiles down on planets, and there are a ton of asymmetric planets.
Many.
And you also have like a corporation, and that's going to move up the tracks for the different terrains you're putting in different ways and give you different powers. And like you get these great little like Mars rovers as well that you're driving around collecting asteroids. So I think it looks really great, and it's such a great combination of tile placement and track climbing, and it's my number 16.
My number 15 is Everdell, and Everdell was kind of love at first sight for us. We found it in a cafe in Bristol, and we learned it and we played it, and it's such a pretty game. And that tree, that dumb tree, I know how annoying that gets in like your 10th game, but in your first few games, having that like 3D tree just adds so much to the whole feeling of it.
And all the chunky like resources with the thick sticks and the berries
the
are amazing.
Squishy, I want to eat those berries. But this game does a really good job of resource management and card tableau building, and it does it like it's a surprisingly tough and surprisingly tight game, I think, for how adorable everything is. Because in that first round, still, I think, and we've played dozens of games, I'm always like, how am I going to finish my town? I've got like 2 buildings out. And then by that last round, you've built up this really satisfying engine. Putting the animals into the houses and putting the doors on the houses, that is genius. That is probably my favorite mechanic in this game. And having the different expansions gives us all of these different ways to play it, these totally different experiences, like the one where you're riding on the animal. That one's so much meaner than a lot of the other ones. And also New Leaf, which I think just kind of like fixes a lot of like the small problems in the base game and does kind of what Belfair does, but I think maybe even better. And Everdell is just, we'll play it forever, I feel like, and it is my 15.
My number 15 is Marvel United, and I'm going with the X-Men version because we have so much stuff. And I'm so grateful that you are here to be able to tell the characters at a glance. Because otherwise, I would be looking at these little chibis and I'd be mixing them up all of the time, but you're just like, oh yeah, I know exactly who that one is. And it looks like a little kid's game because it's bright, it's colorful, it is fairly straightforward because you just play a card and it will give you like 1 of 3 basic actions, sometimes 2. You do those actions as well as the actions of the card before, and you're trying to defeat the bad guys. But It's surprisingly challenging. We like lose like 40% of the time. I think we have a 60% win rate.
I think, although we played this with a friend on the weekend, and we've had to play like 4 or 5 games to finally win one.
Yeah, it really depends on the bad guy, and I think that's one of its strengths as well, is particularly if you get more boxes, is you can have a ton of bad guys, and that's where the replayability really ties in, because they feel so different depending on like what they're doing. And I now have a bit of a personal connection with X-Men just because of your love for it too. And it is my number 50.
My number 14 is Dorf Romantic, and we talk a lot about how much we like to have kind of comfy, cozy games. This has got to be the coziest of all the cozers. This is like a warm blanket and a hot chocolate as a board game. Because Dorf Romantic, you're building this lovely little town, and you're building it cooperatively, and you can play with any number of players, but I think it works so perfectly with 2 people.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to play it with more.
Yeah, because you're taking these things out, you're putting them out on the board, you're making them match in like a really satisfying way, and you're trying to make groups of stuff. You've always got 3 tasks that you're trying to do, and so you're always kind of working towards those. So it gives you like enough little guidance. And as you go through the campaign as well, and you get new tiles, all of them just add like a little bit more to the game, like one more mechanic, but it never feels like too much. And even putting all of it away, because we're through, I don't know, our 2nd or 3rd time through the game, putting all of those tiles back into their boxes and playing it again is almost as good as it was the first time. And I have not had that in another campaign game, I think, where I can just so like comfortably play through it again. And I can see us playing through this 5-6 times before we get even close to being bored of this game.
And in theory, you can't lose, but if you play with Shawn, if you get a poor enough score, he will mark it as a loss.
Yeah, we gotta learn a valuable lesson, because that was we had one terrible game that was a loss. So we have like 45 wins and 1 loss in this, and I think that loss was a real growth experience for us as well. And this is my 14.
My number 14 is Dune Imperium, which is a worker placement deck building game. And it came out before the movie, but it is based on the newest movies with the artwork. And it really, I feel like, does such a good job of capturing Dune in a few different ways. First of all, water is a very important resource, and you never have enough of it. Secondly, it's like incredibly like scarce, including points, because the winner is the first to 10 points. And so there could be a couple of rounds where you're not scoring a single point. And so you're like eking out each of those little victories. And you can do it in different ways, because you can do it with like trying to be very political and like going up the politics tracks, or you can really be combative and going in on the battles, or you'll often do a mix. And I really like the battling system where you don't have to go in, but once you see the victory condition, you might send like a whole bunch of troops to try and win. And this works really well at 2 players. You do have to use a bot, but the bot is super straightforward and adds an unknown factor into the battles, and it is my number 14.
My number 13 is Lost Ruins of Arnak. And right when I saw this announced, if you remember, I was like, this is going to be my favorite game this year. You were
so excited for it.
I was so into it. And it's because of the whole Indiana Jones-ness of it. But it did not disappoint. This is really a like adventure-y, explorer-y game. It's also a really tight resource management and deck building game. And it's also got a bunch of different asymmetric characters, at least with the expansions. But in Lost Ruins of Arnak, you've got a balance between, you've got to get these different resources, you've got to explore the islands, you've got to fight these bad guys, but you also have to move up this track. And everything uses resources, and you have so few. It's so scarce, and you've got to build such a like tight little engine, especially to move up that track and to get to the very top of that, because that's where you're going to get so many of your points, and that's where Jess gets all of her points, and that's why she beats me at this so much. And because she beats me so much, I was so happy when they brought out the co-op game. And the co-op version of this is terrific. It's basically the only way we play now, is the 2nd expansion, which adds this whole co-op campaign. And it's so impressive that it can take this game that was such like a tight, competitive game where you're fighting for all these spots and use all those same mechanics and be a co-op game in a way that feels like it was always a co-op game. And it is my number 13.
My number 13 is Barren Park, which is a game all about building a bear park. And so it is a polyomino tile placement game. And anytime you put a tile down, you get to pick new tiles for whatever you're covering. And that system is so clever because it's not only where you want to put that tile, but also what the next tiles you might want are. And everything is a bit of a race as well, because all of the stacks of tiles go from like higher points to lower points. And anytime you finish like a section, you get to put a great little bear statue in it. And those also go from higher to lower. So you're factoring that all in terms of what the goals are, which stacks have the highest number of values for which tiles you're taking. And then at the end, you end up with this like great little bear park filled with like koala bears, polar bears, and it looks lovely. And it is my number 13.
My number 12 is Draftosaurus, and Draftosaurus is just a tremendous draft and pass game. And it looks so simple, and it's so adorable, and it is pretty simple, but it is a game where you've got a big bag of dinosaurs, and you're taking a bunch of those dinosaurs, like real dinosaurs that are all different shapes, and they're the awesome little wooden dinosaurs, and you're putting those in your hand. You're keeping one of them and you're passing the rest around the circle. And it's so much more fun than playing the same thing with cards. You could have done this game with cards, but it wouldn't have been nearly as awesome.
Like putting them in your little dino park looks so great.
It really does. And so you're adding them to your dino park and they score in different ways. And it's basically kind of a roll and write game, but again, way more awesome because it's got dinosaurs. And it's got two sides to that board as well. And so the back side of it all scores differently. We basically always play frontsy backsy. But also the two expansions as well. One of them adds pterodactyls, one of them adds plesiosaurs. And those are great too. I just want even more of this game. It's so simple. Like the rules are almost nothing, but it gives me so much and it gives me just so much joy. I will play this game anytime with anyone. I love it so much, and it is my number 12.
My number 12 is Dwellings of Eldervale, and it combines so many different mechanics. There is a bit of tile placement because you are building out the map together. You're also doing worker placement because you're putting your workers on the map. You're doing area control because only one person can become a house on each of those tiles, and that's probably my favorite part is you get these roofs that you put over top of your meeple.
It's genius.
It is so great. There is combat, but it uses such a great combat system where it's just whoever rolled the highest dice wins. And you are also like building a tableau of cards, and that tableau of cards gives you different actions and abilities, and often those get activated when you bring your workers back. So it makes bringing workers back a really like satisfying turn where it doesn't feel like a waste. And it combines all of those so seamlessly whilst also having asymmetric factions. And it looks great with the bright colorful tiles, the big chunky monsters. I don't need the sound bases that come in the super deluxe versions. We went with the medium level and that was perfectly fine. And it is my number 12.
My number 11 is Ark Nova. And Ark Nova is kind of the perfect Frankenstein game. It takes all these mechanics I really like and it just kind of tightens them up a little bit and then puts them together in just like the perfect way. So it's got this really great action selection system that I've seen in Civilization and I know is in other games as well, where you're moving up your actions slowly and they're getting stronger if you wait longer to do them. I really like that. Also the tile placement, how you're building your zoo, the cards, how the cards tie to the tile placement, the scoring track that has that thing from Raja's the Ganges, but then also just the animals, because I love animals. And this is also specifically a conservation zoo, so your whole point really is to help these animals and then release them back into the wild. So it's really like an altruistic game, but you get to have these animals for that little while. And I love animals, even when they're not dinosaurs. I love real, actual, existing animals as well. And you can go in so many different routes in this, where you're making your petting zoo, or you've got like just your giant animals, you've got a mix and the aviaries and with the expansion as well, because then that makes it so that you've got a couple of those, your actions are like specific to you, or they're just like a little bit better, a little bit different, and it adds the marine animals, and I love that too. But it's just such a great game. And I probably have it a little bit low. I think we just don't play it enough, and it is my number 11.
My number 11 is Tapestry, which is an abstracted civilization game. And in Tapestry, you are using resources to go up different tracks. And the tracks represent like military, science, exploration, tech, and arts if you get the expansion as well. While you're doing this, you're also getting these buildings that you put on your city map, and they look great.
They're so cool.
But one of the things I love most about it is it's really about trying to extend how much you can do, because it's constantly converting resources. So as you go up the tracks, you have to spend resources to do so, but you will get the various bonuses, and those bonuses might give you resources that let you do more. And it's usually the person who's like still playing at the end that tends to win, because they've just managed to do the most with everything that they have. And there's so many like different cogs that are getting turned, because there's your asymmetric civilizations. With the expansion, there's your asymmetric maps. The tech cards also will lead you down different paths, as will like the different tiles that you're putting out. It's just always an interesting puzzle to just see how much you can do with everything that you're given. And it's my number 11.
And that is it. That is the second last video in this top 100. So next time it is the big one. We're counting down from 10 to 1.
Thank you so much for watching. Please let us know in the comments if you played any of the games we talked about, which are your favorites, and as usual, please like, subscribe, and hopefully we'll see you next time for another game.